Good morning and welcome back. So, a new beginning, Parsha Shemos, Book of Shemos, the Book of Exodus. So, the storyline of this portion, and the portions coming up are probably not that hard to really keep track of because we're all familiar with the stories of the Exodus, the 10 plagues, leaving Mitzrayim, Pesach, etc. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail in terms of the details of the portion. Suffice to say that this is the beginning of the persecution of the Jewish people in Egypt. The way that the slavery developed in Mitzrayim, the Medrash says there were 4 steps to the slavery. And I was curious because when I was going through the portion, I was trying to identify exactly what did the slavery look like? What was the specific, from Midrashim, there are many Midrashim describing the details, but in terms of the verses themselves, what do the verses say about the slavery and the persecution and the servitude that they were experiencing? So the Medrash says that there was actually 4 stages to the slavery, the power inflicted upon the Jewish people. The first stage was a forced labor to a point of forcing them to sleep away from their houses. The Medrash says that he wanted the Jewish slaves not to be sleeping in their own homes in order not to procreate and have more children. That was the first one. That's the first stage of the slavery. A second step in the slavery was the law which he passed to tell the Jewish midwives, to kill newborn Jewish baby boys. And the third was that there's a debate about this. Either the Jewish boys were thrown into the river, or the Pharaoh started bathing in Jewish blood. That's what the Medrash, like there's a famous Medrash about. He had tsaras. He actually suffered from tsaras, and he bathed in Jewish blood in order to alleviate the suffering of his own leprosy, tsaras. And then the fourth step of the slavery, we're going to focus on, which is at the end of the portion, which is not being given enough straw for the bricks. So it's really that part I want to focus on. I want to zoom into that particular episode of the story of this aspect of the decree that Pharaoh inflicted upon the Jews of not giving enough straw. So this is in reference to the bricks and the mortar which the Jews were involved in making. They were making bricks. What were they making bricks for? They were making bricks in order to build the storage cities of Pisum and Ramses. And the Jews were commissioned. This was their job. They built these cities, and they're making bricks. And the beginning of the portion is all about making these bricks. And then the end of the portion also turns back to this story of the making of these bricks. But before that begins, it's where this is chapter 5 of the portion. This is after Moshe's come back to Mitzrayim, and he's also performed the miracles of the serpent, of the stick turning into a serpent, and the different miracles which Hashem instructed him to tell him. And he shows these miracles, he shows these signs to the Jewish people, and that's what gains their confidence in him. And then it says that Moshe and Aaron then went to Pharaoh himself. They went to him and they appealed to him to send the Jewish people out. And the nature of the appeal initially was to send them out for a 3-day journey. But the verse says, that Hashem, who was Hashem's, so said Hashem, the God of Israel, send out my people that they may celebrate for me in the wilderness. And then Pharaoh says back, who is Hashem that I should listen to him? I'm not going to send them out. So they said, the God of the Moshe and Aaron then said, no, the God of the Hebrews happened upon us. Let us now go for a 3-day journey into the wilderness, and we'll bring offerings to Hashem our God, lest he strike us dead with the plague of the sword. And the king of Egypt said to them, Moshe and Aaron, why did you disturb the people from its work? He was only incensed even more by this request, and this stimulated him to increase the intensity of the slavery on the Jews. And this is where it then goes on to say that he was so incensed by this. He said, now, up until this point, the way they made these bricks out of clay and water, and it required straw as well. The straw was a necessary ingredient in the bricks. So Pharaoh says to his servants, the slaves, now they have to not only do they have to make the same quota of bricks with the straw which we provided them till this point, they have to go out themselves and gather the straw themselves. The straw which is necessary for these bricks, they have to gather the straw themselves and make the bricks from the straw, which we're not going to continue giving to them. They have to gather the straw themselves with the same quota. And of course, an experience like that for these slaves to now have to produce the same quota of bricks, but also to gather the straw for the bricks was a even more intensity, great intensity and hardship for them. And it made it more difficult for them. And it says that the people spread out through the entire land to gather gleanings for straw, and the taskmasters. Now the taskmasters are the Jewish, the taskmasters are the Egyptian taskmasters. They're the ones who are really, in charge of the Jews. But they had also beneath them, they had foremen who were Jewish foremen themselves. And the taskmasters pressed, saying, "Complete your work, the daily matter each day, as when there was straw." The foremen of the children of Israel, these are the Jewish leaders, so to speak, foremen of the Jews, whom Pharaoh's taskmasters had appointed over them, were beaten, saying, why did you not complete your requirement to make bricks, as yesterday, before yesterday, even today? And the foreman of the children of Israel came and cried out to Pharaoh, saying, "Why do you do this to your servants? Straw is not being given to your servants. Yet they tell us, make bricks. Behold, your servants are being beaten, and it's a sin for your people." And then Pharaoh responds, he says, you're lazy. That's why you're saying, let's go out and bring offerings to Hashem. He wasn't buying it, obviously. "I go to your work, straw will not be given to you, but you must provide the same quota of bricks." And the foreman of the Jewish people saw them in distress when they said, "Don't reduce your bricks, the daily matter each day." So the difficulty, the pain, and the emotional pain, the psychological pain that Jews were going through was intensifying multifold. So they encountered Moshe. So the four men then encountered Moshe and Aaron standing opposite them as they left Pharaoh's presence. And they said to them, "May Hashem look upon you and judge, for you have made our very scent abhorrent in the eyes of Pharaoh and the eyes of his servants, to place a sword in their hands to murder us." They complained to Moshe and Aaron, like, what are you doing to us? I mean, you see, the thing is that it became more intense because Moshe and Aaron came to Pharaoh in the first place to make that request to leave for this 3-day journey. That's what aggravated Pharaoh even more, to intensify the labor by not providing the straw. So now the four men are coming to Moshe and Aaron and say, "You caused this to us. What's going on over here?" So Moshe returned to Hashem and said, "My Lord, why have you done all this evil to this people?" Now Moshe is going to Hashem and is expressing his complaint. "Why have you sent me? It doesn't make any sense. For the time I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he's only done evil to this people, and you haven't rescued your people." So he's complaining to Hashem. There's a whole discussion about that. And that's the end of the portion with one more verse, actually 2 more verses, one more verse. Hashem then said to Moshe, "Now you will see what I shall do to Pharaoh, for through a strong hand will he send them out, and with a strong hand will he drive them from his land." And that's the end of the portion. That's the segue to next week's portion when the plagues begin. So Hashem says, hold on, be patient. You're going to see what I'm going to do to the Egyptians right now. So be patient. I know it's very difficult for you, and it's difficult for the Jews, but wait, just hold on. And that's where the portion ends. Okay, so that's the end of the portion. So going through that episode over here, the straw with the bricks, I was, again, one of my, I guess my hobbies through the week is to contemplate the whatever aliyah we're doing. And what struck me personally was this constant, this repetition of this, of the story of the straw with the bricks, and I don't know, something just kind of niggled me. Like, what's the message of this? What is the message of the straw? I mean, I understand practically. I mean, there's definitely a practical, storyline over here that this is what he decided to do. He wanted to, not provide them the material they needed for the bricks. But I know something niggled at me. So we'll come back to it. And maybe I'll have an answer to my own personal question, and maybe it'll be beneficial to everyone else as well. But there is a medrash, though, that addresses one anomaly, and that is that when Moshe and Aaron came to Pharaoh over here to ask Pharaoh to send the Jewish people out for this 3-day journey. So the pasuk says, beginning of chapter 5, it says, afterwards Moshe and Aaron came to Pharaoh, and they said to him, "Hashem has said, send my people out." Now, there's nothing particularly strange about that. However, when you contrast it to a few verses before this, verse 29 describes how when Moshe and Aaron came to the elders of the Jewish people, to show the signs that Hashem had showed Moshe. The verse says, Moshe and Aaron went and gathered all of the elders of the children of Israel, and then Aaron spoke all the words that Hashem had spoken to Moshe, because it was a partnership between Moshe and Aaron. And then he performed the signs in the sight of the people. And the people believed. So these signs were done before the people and the elders, and they believed. And they believed and they trusted, and they heard that Hashem had remembered the children of Israel, and that he saw their affliction, and they bowed down their heads and prostrated themselves. So right before our present passage, we have a picture here of Moshe, Aaron, and the elders of Israel, the Zakanim, the elders. So the Medrash says, where were the elders now when Moshe and Aaron went before Paro? And the elders appear before this as well, before this part of the portion. So the elders, and what are the elders? The elders are the 70 leaders, they represent, even though there was no Sanhedrin at this point in the story, high court, but the elders were, going to become the Sanhedrin in the future. And the elders, like in every nation, there are elders, there are leaders of the nation, there are elders. So the question is, where were these elders, the Medrash asks? Where did they go? Like they were there a second ago, now they disappeared. So this is the Medrash's question, and the Medrash responds and says, I always open my Sfarim to the right page until I realize it's on the wrong page. Oh, here it is. Okay, I'm sorry. Look at this. I spent 10 minutes beforehand. Again, this place over here. Here we go. So it says that, where did the elders disappear to when Moshe and Aaron went before Paro? That they weren't listed over here in chapter 5, verse 1. So Medrash says back, the sages said, Holchu imahim ezekanim. The elders went with them initially, but then hayu meganvin es atzmon. They gradually stole away, and slid away one by one, shnayim, 2 by 2. And they slowly slid away and just disappeared until Moshe and Aaron were left by themselves. Kaven shagir lepaltrin shel Paro. Once they got to the palace of Paro, lo nimtza echad. Not one elder was left behind. And that's what happened to them. They disappeared. The Medrash doesn't say exactly what their motivation was, but they got scared. Whatever. They weren't there together with Moshe and Aaron in the final appearance before Paro. Shekain Kasiv, Achabon Moshe and Aaron. And it says, Moshe and Aaron came, Vehechan is aware with the elders, and they went away. So listen to what happens. The Medrash goes on and says that it doesn't end there. The story doesn't end. Because they did that, Amalem HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem then said to them, Kacha Sisam, this is what you did? You slid away and were there together with Moshe and Aaron? Chayechem, by your life, Shani Parei Lachem, by your life, I'm going to pay you back for that slipping away. Messiah, when will I pay you back? And when did he pay the elders back for slipping away and disappearing at this crucial moment? When Moshe and Aaron went up together with the elders, Lahar Sinai, to Mount Sinai. In a few portions from now, we're going to learn about the revelation at Sinai. And in one of the descriptions of the revelation, it says that Moshe and Aaron and the elders went up onto the mountain, the Kabbalah Torah, to receive the Torah. And then Hashem told the elders, you go back. They all went up together, but then he said to the elders, you go back, you step away. As it says, to the elders he said, Shavu lanu b'zeh, you go back. V'yomru el Paro, then it goes on, the Medrash continues on, so they were, so to speak, paid back for that lack of supporting Moshe and Aaron in his audience with Paro. They were paid back by not being allowed to go up to the mountain together with Moshe and Aaron. That's what happened. That's the story. That's the behind-the-scenes story of that episode. That's why they're not mentioned over here. So one of the great Musa giants of the Navardic schools of Musa, his name was Rabbi Nissim Petashinsky. So he tells us, just from that little anecdote or little passage itself, gives us a very, very important insight into how to be successful and where success lies. Because if there's a flawed foundation, If there's a flawed foundation, albeit a very, very subtle crack in the foundation, it manifests itself later on in the final building. That's what he wants to point out from this, because you see the juxtaposition. Medrash said, because you slipped away and you didn't support Moshe and Aaron in their audience with Paro, it's gonna come back to you. And you're not going to be part of that magnificent experience, the revelation, the more direct revelation that Moshe experienced himself. Now, I know maybe the question you're asking, what happened to Aaron in that? I don't know about that, but it says about the Zaken of the elders that they slipped. They weren't part of it. They weren't privy to that experience that Moshe was going to be privy to. And in the words of I have it says over here, I'll have the translation over here. It says that he writes. It's not even like a punishment per se. He says not really a punishment. Punishment is more like you did this, therefore you get that. It's not even a punishment in the usual sense. He explains, for the simple reason that they had committed no sin, because really there was no sin. They weren't obligated necessarily to stand before Paro, but they were inspired initially to go with Moshe and Aaron to stand before him, and then they slipped away. They lost courage. These justifications notwithstanding, their lack of courage revealed a weakness in their character and faith. And that weakness, however slight it may have appeared at that time, was going to have its significant consequences. It prevented them from laying a proper spiritual foundation at this critical time, the first stage of what was effectively a training period leading up to the revelation at Sinai. Thus, as much as they learned and grew in the following months from the miraculous events surrounding the Exodus, by the time they arrived at Sinai and sought to ascend the mountain with Moshe and Aaron, their erstwhile flaw had become conspicuously evident, creating a barrier between themselves and God's presence. Inevitably, God cut off their ascent and turned them back, commanding them through Moshe to wait at the bottom until we return to you. Spiritual foundations have to be laid carefully. For the entire edifice that follows will be built upon them. The purity and integrity of the foundation can never be compromised. If they are, the structural cracks will surely grow. So, a simple message, an important message, and something which is relevant to all of us. Every day of our lives, we're building foundations. And what the foundations of yesterday, which is now the edifice of today, we are building foundations today, which will become the edifice of tomorrow. So whatever foundation we are building today, to make sure that that foundation is standing on strong spiritual grounds, so that the edifice we create as we go on in our lives should be a strong edifice as well. So that's what that medrash tells us. What happened to these elders? What more do we know about those elders? Truthfully, I always thought that those elders, even though they had to stay down at the bottom of the mountain, I mistakenly thought that those elders were the elders. They became the Sanhedrin. It's not the case, because those elders actually died. They died in one of the plagues later on, not plagues of Mitzrayim, one of the Taveira, one of the episodes we'll read about in the book of Numbers, one of those times when the Jewish people sinned and people were killed. They ended up dying in one of those episodes. These very same elders, they died in one of those episodes. And the reason for that, because at Sinai, it's a different discussion. Another thing happened at Sinai with those very same elders. The verse says when they came to Sinai, the verse says, "Yechazu es Elokim v'yochlu v'yishtu," which is translated as they stared at Hashem and they ate and they drank, in reference to these elders. They gazed at God, yet they ate and drank. Yet they were experiencing the revelation, but they ate and drank. And it says that these elders were the ones who were guilty for this, because it says that they sinned and that they gazed at the sacred vision while irreverently indulging in food and drink. For that, they deserved to die immediately. But God didn't punish them immediately at that particular point. But those elders, they ended up dying later on. So, and again, I want to emphasize, great people, great things are expected from great people. So whenever we read these stories and these descriptions and severe punishments and intense reactions from Hashem, it's because of their greatness. So we should never underestimate their greatness because of this. They are judged very, very scrupulously based upon their madrega, their level. But that's what happened to these elders. They eventually, so they don't become the true elders of the Jewish people in the story of the story of the Jewish people through the desert. So who replaced them? Who was the replacement for those elders? The replacement of those elders are found in Numbers chapter 11, Bamidbar chapter 11, verse 16. Chapter 11, verse 16 in Bamidbar. And this is where the pasuk says, Yom Hashem al Moshe, and this is much later on. I mean, we're going forward very many years over here after the Exodus, but this is what happens later on. This is when those elders were replaced. It says, Hashem said to Moshe, Asfali Shivim Ish Mezikne Yisrael, gather to me 70 elders. These are different elders. Gather to me 70 elders, Hashiyadata, that you know about. Listen carefully, that you are aware of, that you knew about. Interesting phrase. Gather to me 70 elders that you knew about. We'll come back to that in a second. They are the Ziknei Ha'am. These will be the elders of the people, V'shotrav, and the leaders of the people and the officers. V'lakachtos, take them to the tent of meeting, and basically they're going to become the new elders of the Jewish people. Now, who are these elders? The other elders are gone. The other elders, we learned, had a faulty foundation, which led to them not being as privy to the revelation as Moshe was. They also died as well for another thing which they did. But who are these elders that eventually won the position of being the ultimate elders of the Jewish people? So Rashi says, quoting the Medrash, that these elders over here, these were none other than, drum roll please. Okay, hold 1 second. Let's see where it is over here. He says, these elders over here, yeah. Osan Shahaya Makeh. Remember I said that the verse says, gather the elders that you knew about, that you know about. So Rashi says, what does that mean that you knew about? Osan Makeh, those ones that you recognized. Shetimnu Aleihem Shotrim B'Mitzrayim, that you appointed as the taskmasters in Egypt. The taskmasters we spoke about before, who are under the foremen, not the taskmasters of the foremen, right? Not the Egyptians, but the actual the foremen themselves. They had mercy upon the children of Israel, the Jewish people, and they were stricken instead of them. As it says, because it says, I'm actually reading a different Rashi over here. Let me go back to the Rashi which is more relevant to this over here. Give me a second. There's another Rashi which fills in more detail over here. You see, there's so many sources over here. It's like there's a lot to look to keep them all together. Here's over here. Here, this Rashi is better. It says these individuals were Yisrael. They were Jewish people. They had mercy upon their brethren, because shahayu mashlimin lalevenim, and when they had to complete the certain quota of bricks which they were required to do to bring those bricks to for Paro, for building the cities, and they couldn't produce the same quota because the straw was missing, and they had to gather the straw as well. So the Egyptians started beating them and hitting them, but they wanted to beat them. But who did they beat? They beat those Jewish foremen instead. They took the pain, they took the suffering, they took the beatings themselves. And because they took the suffering and took the beatings, lefikach zachu osan shotrin, those foremen, they merited Leo Sanhedrin. They merited to become the Sanhedrin, right? Those Jews, those foremen, merited to become the Sanhedrin itself. But Netzim and Ruach, and they received the spirit of Hashem from which was transferred from Moshe and put upon them, and that's what it means. That those ones that you knew about, when later on, when Hashem says to Moshe, gather the elders that you knew about, that you are aware of the tova, the goodness that they did in Mitzrayim, because they bared the suffering of the Jewish people, their brothers and sisters, and they took the beatings themselves. So you see, while the first Zakanim, the first elders, lost the position of being the elders because of a flawed foundation of not standing together with Moshe and Aaron before Paro, these elders, the exact opposite happened. because their foundation was one of bearing the burden of their brethren, of the Jewish people, and because they bear that burden, they merited to become the ultimate zaken, the ultimate elders. So you really have a contrast over here of two sets of people, two sets of elders, one who had a flawed foundation and therefore suffered the consequences, and the other group had a solid foundation of empathy, support, and being there for their brothers and sisters, and that's what led them to become the Sanhedrin. So we look. It's a very it reinforces the point of strong foundations lead to great things. But what was the foundation? What was the foundation? It was a foundation of empathy, of a foundation of support, because the first elders, they weren't there to support Moshe and Aaron. The second set of elders, they were certainly there. They were very much there. They took the beatings themselves. And there's a third example, because, I was talking, bricks is the theme of this passage of it. Bricks. So when do we see bricks again after this? So the bricks, the story of the bricks comes up again in Exodus. Where is it over here? 10:24, I think it is. I took my marker out already over here. So in Exodus 10:24, no, 24:10. I'm sorry, 24:10. In Exodus 24:10, Shemos 24:10. Back to Mount Sinai. So again, back to the revelation. So there's another curious statement there. It says that they had this revelation of Hashem, and Tachas Raglov, underneath God's feet, was the likeness of a sapphire brickwork. So this is the next time we see bricks. Underneath his feet, God's feet, in this image of Hashem in the heavens, there was like a likeness of sapphire brickwork. Very mysterious thing. What is sapphire brickwork? Livnas hasapir. What is that? So it's all connected. One of the commentaries, the Cheskune, quotes over here Rabbi Akiva, Medrash of Rabbi Akiva. It says that the Avdei Paro, the servants of Pharaoh, were dochakin, they were pushing, they were macking and hitting the Jews, to make sure they produced the quota of bricks they needed to make, as we learnt about. And the Mitzrayim, they wouldn't give them the straw to make the bricks. And the straw which they had to gather was full of thorns. They had to clean it out and everything. It was very, very difficult. And in the process of Jews going around hurting themselves and suffering to gather this straw to make these bricks, Dom misbotzates Misara Batit. It happened that they would bleed, and the blood would kind of get intermingled together with the straw and the mortar and the bricks they were making. That's where the charosis comes from. They were putting the wine inside the charosis because it was so difficult to go around gathering the straw, and they were cutting themselves from the thorns, and therefore blood was going inside the bricks themselves. But it one step further. Rachel bas beno shel Shuselach. There was one woman, Medrash says, a woman by the name of Rachel. She was the great-granddaughter of Shuselach, maybe Shusel, I'm not sure. But there was a woman by the name of Rachel, and she was pregnant, and she gave birth in the process. She was working hard to gather straw too, and she ended up giving birth in the process for a metzes petit in Bala, and she was together with, like, inside this mud together with her husband at Shiotzav Lad, and the baby came out, and basically it was a miscarriage. It was a miscarriage, the Medrash says, and tragically, you may have heard this story, tragically, this baby got, like, that's horrible to even imagine, got mixed into the bricks and mortar and the bricks or whatever she was making those bricks. But this and she cried out over a child. She was just the pain and the anguish that she was crying out for. Her cry went up to the heavens. Lifnei kisa kavod, her cry went up to the throne of glory of Hashem. The Yard Michael, and the angel Michael came down, unatlu, and took that child, v'halu lifnei kisei hakavod, and brought it up before the throne of glory of Hashem. Va'asa osa malbein. Actually, he took the brick, brought this brick up before Hashem, and then Hashem made that brick, the nasna lemata meraglov shalakadosh baruch Hu, and placed it underneath the feet of Hashem himself. And that's what this brick was. The brick which they saw at Sinai was a brick of that child, of that brick which the woman was making with the child inside of it. And the reason why it's called livnus, a sapphire brick, because the word sapphire is sapir in Hebrew, and it's also similar to the word shapira. Shapira is a like it's another word for the word like a shafir yoledis, like the afterbirth of the afterbirth of a woman giving birth, and it's related to that same word. So this sapphire, maybe it looked blue, is made out of sapphire. I'm not sure exactly, but this brick was symbolic of the pain and the suffering of the Jewish people in Mitzrayim. And what did Hashem do with it? It was placed underneath his feet. And commentaries go on to say that it's an incredible illustration of the famous verse in Tehillim, King David, Imo Anochi B'tzara, that Hashem says, I'm with you in your pain and suffering. Now, we're not going to go into the whole other side discussion why bad things happen. We know, obviously, with this story, this was the segue towards the Exodus and the revelation at Sinai, with this all being planned and designed perfectly. But to think that Hashem is not suffering together with his people is a fallacy. And on the contrary, even if things happen, difficulties happen, challenges happen, people experience suffering and pain, to say that God is not there, like Simon said last week, Hashem is always there. Why things happen, not different discussion, not our department all the time. But Hashem is there. Imo nocha b'tzara. If I'm going through pain, Hashem's with me in pain. And that's what this sapphire brick represented. So the brick appears again at Sinai as a symbol of Hashem being there together with our sorrow, with our pain and suffering. So this really now completes the picture of three types of sharing the suffering of others. There are three ways to share suffering with others. We learned about how the first set of elders, they didn't walk in support of Moshe and Aaron. They didn't stand by his side. That's one way to support somebody, by being there by their side, even if you're not doing anything, just by being there. Another way to support somebody is physically taking the beatings. That was the second set of elders. They did it, and they did that. They rewarded by becoming the Sanhedrin. And the third manifestation of supporting others is empathy, is feeling and really feeling the pain of another person. Hashem, from our experience, Hashem is very far away from us. And that's an example that many times we can be far away from other people. Physically, we can't be in their proximity. But this message of Imo Nuch B'tzara, I'm with you in your pain, is a way that a person can still feel the pain and be supportive of somebody else, even if they're not in their physical proximity. They're very far away from that person. But feeling that pain, suddenly if you have a chance to talk to somebody and you show your empathy and you express yourself and you try to get into their emotional experience and show empathy and daven for that person, to pray for that person, that's what it means to support somebody. So there are many ways to support people, whether it be, again, standing by them physically. There's a thing when people go around to collecting tzedakah. The proper way to collect tzedakah of mishalachim is they go in pairs, like they go as twos. Now, it could be one of the reasons, because, there's a certain presence when you see two people coming, even though one person's doing the ask, but there's another person standing by his side, it gives strength, it gives cogency to the person asking for the tzedakah. So, and that second person, he's not doing anything, he's standing there. Standing by somebody, physically standing. You could be with a friend, you could be with a spouse, you could be with a child, you could be with somebody. You may not be doing anything with words or with any physical action, but by standing there, you're supporting that person. It's very powerful. It feels good for the person who's being supported. And then certainly if a person carries physical burdens and carries the weight, I'm not saying a person should go ahead and be beaten up on behalf of someone else. These are halachic questions, and not for now. But that's what the second set of elders did. They were willing to physically take that burden, take that struggle from the other person. And the third is the empathy, is feeling the pain, feeling the empathy, praying for the person. That's what Hashem's doing. Hashem's doing that all the time. And these are the ways, and this is what we see in this passage over here. So I said to you, I was bothered by straw. I was bothered by the overemphasis of straw. Why? What's all this straw about? So I was looking up to see what exactly is the significance of straw. Rashi says actually, the purpose of the straw was to give support to the bricks. That's what they did. That's what they used straw for. Straw was needed to support the strength of the bricks, because the bricks, the clay, like it takes a long time to dry out. So it's putting the straw inside the bricks enabled the clay to dry quicker, and also the lattice structure of the straw gave more strength to the bricks as well. So the significance, the message of the straw is it supports the bricks. So I thought it was rather ironic, or hashgach, I don't know, rather ironic that the lesson of supporting and being there by others comes out so clearly in this little passage over here, and it's visually supported by the picture of straw, that we need straw to be able to support our bricks. But what are the bricks? The bricks are symbolic of our own bricks. I said at the beginning, every day of our life we are laying bricks. We are setting down bricks. Every day we're putting bricks down every single day. But what kind of bricks are we putting down? We've got to make sure that those bricks which we are putting down every single day are strong bricks. What provides strength? What is the kind of strength which we need to put down in those bricks? It's helping other people, supporting other people, represented by the teven, by the straw. And it's interesting that the word teven as Hebrew, there's two words for straw. One is teven and one is kash. The word which appears, I think it's the predominant word over here, is teven. Teven is related to the word binyan, to build. So therefore it reflects the nature of, it provides support and building stability and durability to the bricks which is being put inside of. But also the word tevuna means understanding, to understand. So I thought it was another further reminder of the type of straw, the type of strength that I need to put into my own personal bricks which I'm laying today. What kind of strength do I need to put into it? The strength comes from my supporting other people, helping other people. Because if I live in a vacuum, just doing things for myself, without supporting and being there, empathetic, and all the different three manifestations of helping other people, then my own bricks are not very strong. The bricks of the foundations of those first elders, because they didn't go out to support Moshe and Aaron, their bricks were weak, and therefore the edifice was weak, and therefore they weren't privy to the revelation like Moshe. So our straw, the teven, that we need to put into our own bricks every single day of our lives, is to combine whatever we're doing to be supporting other people, whether it be empathy, whether it be physically helping them, whether it be carrying their burdens, all the different ways to be there. Ima anochi b'tzara, to be together with other people in their challenges. So, one could say that, the expression is the straw which broke the camel's back. I'm changing that once. I'm saying that's going to be a new phrase now. It's the straw which built the camel's back. The straw which built the camel's back. It's the straw which builds us. It's the support of helping others which build our backs and help us to make our foundations even stronger. We should merit to always be to support ourselves, each other in all of our endeavors, and we should see the coming of the Mashiach very quickly.